Here's everything you need to know about your 7th house within your natal chart. And make sure that you stick around until the end of this video where I'll be giving you more resources that you can use in order to understand more about the houses in your natal chart in a deeper way. The 7th house is called the descendant and was traditionally called the setting degree because it represents that part of the sky where not only the sun sets below the western horizon, but it also represents that part of the sky where all the other planets seem to sink below the western horizon based on diurnal or primary motion. The 7th house is the house of marriage, partnership, and open enemies. In traditional astrology, the 7th house represents both marriage as well as all the other relationships that we may have along the path of exploring intimacy with others. The 7th house has traditionally been considered the house of open enemies because the 7th house has an oppositional relationship to the ascendant, which makes it a very powerful house within our natal charts. As one of the 4 angular houses, the 7th house is a house where planets have 100% power to show their stuff. And very often, planets within our 7th house have a direct impact on marriage within our natal promise. Now, even though all of the houses have multiple meanings, it's important to know the primary meanings that a house might have that tends to stand out more than its other potential meanings. As far as the 7th house is concerned, the primary part of our natal promise that the 7th house is meant to fulfill is our natal promise in relationship to marriage and romance. However, the 7th house can also represent people who are in a business relationship with, and it definitely has the potential to represent that in something like horary astrology if our business partnerships are a specific thing that we're asking about. From a marriage perspective, very often planets within the 7th house represent the landscape of our marriage, whereas the ruler of our 7th house very often represents the person who we find ourselves either marrying or having a deeply intimate relationship with later on in our lives. When we find ourselves attracting a particular pattern or style of lover into our lives, we can look at the rule of our 7th house in order to understand the type of characters who we're both attracted to, as well as the people who we're subconsciously attracting to ourselves in general. If we were to apply our Chaldean order of Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon to the 12 houses of our natal horoscope, then the 7th house has a natural relationship with the Moon. Which makes sense because in mundane astrology, the moon represents the vox populi or the voice of the people in general, and in natal astrology, the 7th house represents all of the people who we both interact and traffic with on a daily basis. From a medical astrology perspective, the 7th house is representing our kidneys, our ureters, and the lumbar region of our spine. And it's often been commented on that in the same way as the kidneys represent a partnership within our bodies, the 7th house represents our partnerships within the world at large. To receive a free sample chapter of my book, Mastering Traditional Astrology, set to be published in spring 2023, sign up for my newsletter down below where you'll also gain access to other giveaways as well as free lectures from my private masterclass series. If you've enjoyed this video on the 7th house, then click on this link to watch the next video on the 8th house.